We're now joined by CBS Sports NFL analyst Charles Davis, as well as joined in studio by Emory Hunt. And Merry Christmas to you both. And guys, the Baltimore Ravens, who thrashed and dashed their way to a big win over the Texans. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry running all through this Texans defense, and Baltimore's D suffocating C.J. Stroud and co. But CD, I want to come your way first. What were your overall reactions just to this beatdown that we got to see on behalf of the Ravens?
Well, Merry Christmas to you both, and Happy Hanukkah, which has officially begun now at sundown. So, look, my initial thoughts were going into it. Emory and I had talked about it this afternoon, and I thought Derrick Henry would be the focal point of what was going on in this game, and I don't think I was far off on that one, and let's be honest about it. We know that Lamar Jackson can do it without Derrick Henry because he won 2 MVPs without him. But with him, so much better, right? That's how it works. Now, the flip side of all this, with all the offensive juggernaut, with those guys beating people up with their legs, of course, and then Lamar following up with escaping pressure and finding people downfield and throwing sharp passes and everything working. Zach Orr is the defensive coordinator of Baltimore, and let's be honest about it, Emory, earlier this season, people were wondering if that was a mistake, that he took over from Mike McDonald, now the head coach in Seattle. They weren't playing like Ravens, as they like to say in Baltimore, but they've changed their philosophy. They're playing a lot more of what I see, Emory, of top-down defense. Anything you want in front is fine. We'll rally and tackle it. We just can't keep giving up the deep shots downfield. And today they took away those deep shots for the most part from C.J. Stroud in Houston and suffocated them on their way to that 31-2 win.
Charles is dead on, because we talked about this earlier this afternoon about the secondary of Houston and how will they, or secondary of Baltimore, how will they respond to this Houston Texans passing game, and how will the Texans passing game respond to losing Tank Dell? Baltimore, every time you saw a pass go to a Houston Texans receiver, you saw a Baltimore Ravens jersey just plastered on the wideout, playing through the hands of the receiver, just attacking the ball, making great plays at or behind the line of scrimmage in terms of like tackling the runners on the perimeter. We saw the big time play to keep Joe Mixon out of the end zone, and CD touched on it, talked about Zach Orr and how the first part of the season everyone was like, wow, this could be a big mistake, to where we are now. Houston didn't even score a point. So at the end of the day, this defense is now starting to look like a Ravens defense, combined with the balance that we're seeing offensively from Baltimore with a quarterback that's playing MV3 level. It's going to be crazy to try to slow down his team moving forward.
Okay, MV3 level, because speaking of Lamar, we didn't maybe see that Jackson those 5 touchdowns, but he did set the all-time rushing record for a quarterback, surpassing Mike Vick's record and doing it in less games and in less carries. But Charles, just grand scheme, taking a step back, looking at this, what does this mean for Lamar's legacy? And just considering he's still ascending, and the likelihood also that anybody can catch him.
Yeah, the rush yards, that's terrific, right? I mean, that's part of his legacy, and well-deserved, right? He was a 1,000-yard runner. But in recent years, you've noticed the number of yards per season dropping. Why? Better in the pocket, more comfortable in what he's doing, and when he moves with his legs in and out of the pocket, just as we're seeing right there, eyes are still downfield looking for a target. Whereas younger in his career, he would have moved to run. Now he moves looking for someone to get open, and zip, balls to someone, and there you go. That's where things are changing for him. So yes, Mike Vick's record is gone, and it's going to be keep being increased. But what's happening for him is throwing the football is a huge component of his game, and not necessarily an accessory piece anymore. It might be the focal point for a lot of what they do. And if you take all the MV3 talk, it's legitimate. Because him, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, if you do a blind test and look at the numbers, you're going to like Lamar Jackson's numbers.
And you guys talk about this also. It's coming off of the fact that less mistakes as well when we're seeing him now the way he's running the ball compared to where he did years prior.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because when we're talking about Lamar Jackson and watching him, let's just say the last 2 games, he looks so much under control and confident in the scheme and what they're asking him to do, and the trust in his receivers. To CD's point, earlier in his career, he probably didn't trust his receivers outside of Mark Andrews as much as he does now. Probably didn't trust the scheme for that matter as well, but now we're seeing him just do whatever he wants to do out there on the field. And what really makes him dangerous, and we saw it on display today, is the level of explosivity within his game. 11.2 yards an attempt, 21.8 yards a carry. When you have someone that's able to do that, that is just chaotic for a defense. Not only does it make it an 11-on-11 game, but it just makes it so hard to really stay gap disciplined, assignment sound on both ends of defense when you have a guy that can really just tear you up explosively like Lamar Jackson can.
And as we move on real quick, but for my colleagues, don't forget also that Lamar Jackson is a veteran now, okay? Veterans don't like to get hit as much as they did when they were younger, okay? You bouncing off the deck, getting hit in the pocket, getting hit at the end of runs, not what it was when you were younger, when you bounced up and laughed at it. You feel it more on Monday, right? You feel it more on Tuesday. He's much more judicious about what he's doing. But to Emory's point, the trust in what he has around him, the trust in Todd Monken, his offensive coordinator, who's given him the keys to this offense, and he's a full participant now. We're seeing it all come together. He's much more. He's much smarter about everything that he's doing. And can he still be spectacular? Absolutely. We saw it again today.
Hey, let's dive more into that MV3 talk, Charles, because after this performance that we saw, has Lamar maybe swayed your vote at all? Who do you have as your MVP?
Oh, I'm taking it all the way to the limit. There's no ifs, ands, buts. But I will say this. I was talking about this with one of our colleagues, Evan Washburn, and he made a great point to me. Oftentimes what happens with MVP talk is sometimes the story carries you all the way through. And this year, let's be honest about it. The story is Josh Allen. Because Buffalo wasn't expected to be quite as good. This was when they were vulnerable. He lost a key weapon in Stephon Diggs, doesn't have a wide receiver one, and he put him on his back and he's carried him, and he deserves every bit of talk about MVP. But as I said before, if you did a blind test and did it by the numbers, it's not a lockdown solid thing. And this past week was not the best effort for Josh Allen in terms of numbers, but he did it the way you're supposed to. An apex quarterback finds a way to win. But I think he's the story this year, and I think that might give him the edge. But if it's just strictly numbers, how a team is playing, Lamar Jackson is very much in it. And how can you count out Jared Goff and what's happening in Detroit? There's a lot that goes into it. But I think Josh Allen's story and kind of the feel gives him the advantage as we go down the stretch.
I love what CD is saying, because to me, I simply say zoom out a little bit and see the whole picture. And if you look at what everyone is doing, then you have a better choice of who is going to win the MVP. I'm a propagandist, so I'm going to come out here and say Lamar Jackson should win it. Because he only threw one interception that we saw last week, and that was against Pittsburgh. And even I can make a case that didn't even count his way because the receiver stopped on his route. So he really didn't throw no interception. But to Charles' point, if we just look at what's happening this year, man, you could make a case for those three quarterbacks, Saquon Barkley, the other guy that we saw out here on the field today in Derrick Henry, all are playing at an MVP level, and you should let the entire season play out before you make that adjustment, because what's going to happen, everybody's going to say Lamar Jackson tonight. Sunday, everybody's going to say Josh Allen, and it changes every day based on the narrative.
I think we're all guilty sometimes of recency biases. We see sometimes these grand performances, and we maybe ignore what might have happened the week prior. But like you said, taking a step back and look at the entire picture before making a decision here. But Charles, let's talk about the other side of this matchup, because that was a brutal and maybe even embarrassing loss for Houston. They're failing to find the end zone, and then defensively giving up a season high in yards. Just how do the Texans respond from a loss like this?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch, because they've gone through this a little bit this season where they had to adjust to being the hunted. All right, one of the great cliches in sports last year was just fun, wasn't it, Emory? Just a ball for the Houston Texans. No one expected anything. First-year head coach, rookie quarterback who wasn't the #1 pick in the draft. He was #2, so he wasn't expected to be as good as the #1 guy, and on and on and on. And guess what? You end up with the Rookie of the Year on offense in Stroud, the Rookie of the Year on defense in Will Anderson, DeMeco Ryans is Coach of the Year, and boys, it's fun and games. But this year, oh boy, here comes everyone. Tape, we've watched, we've done. They've handled it pretty well, even though they've had their struggles. I think what's been an issue for them, and Emory pointed out with Tank Dell being gone, the lack of big plays on offense that they got last year because people are playing them differently. I'm eager to see them get off the deck and finish strong. Can they run the ball a little bit better? That's going to be interesting for me to watch down the stretch.
Yeah, they're coming off that emotional loss to Kansas City. You guys talk about the loss of Tank Dell. already a short week. I mean, obviously a lot mentally there, but like you said, potentially an opportunity to bounce back, and that is in week 18. They will be taking on the Titans. Charles, Emory, as always, thank you guys so much for the insight. And taking a look at the AFC North standings, well, with that win, the Ravens currently sitting on top at 11-5. They'll have the opportunity to clinch the division next week, taking on the Browns. Well, some teams are unwrapping playoff hopes, while others might be left out in the cold. Coming up, we light up the latest AFC playoff picture after Wednesday's slate. That's next on CBS Sports HQ.